So my own story is been very much about how do we change the system so that people can have more control. When I started working with people with learning difficulties in 1990, one of the things that really struck me was people didn't have any control. They were placed in houses, they were placed in day centres, they had no control over their own lives, about the support that they received. So how do you change that? Well, actually, I started by writing a paper and talking about it and saying, the system should be changed. But unsurprisingly, that doesn't change very much. So what I tried to do in the early 90s in London was to figure out how to individualise funding and give people as much control over it as possible. People started to move out of group homes into their own homes. People used the funding to get a job or just employ the people who were right for them. And I did that with a few individuals. In the mid-90s, in 1996, in fact, I started an organisation in Scotland called Inclusion Glasgow. And we basically took that approach and did it for everybody. So everybody had their own budget, their own team, their own lives, their own homes. We sprung about 50 people from a long-stay institution back into the community in Glasgow, and it worked brilliantly. So I started saying, well, if we can do that in that way, then why doesn't the whole system, what's called the care management system or the social work system, do the same thing? Why don't we treat everybody like they have a right to be in control of their own lives? So I developed this kind of notion that we called self-directed support. And one of the key ideas in that was that people had a budget, their entitlement, and they could decide how it was spent. But it also involved people having much more flexibility and control. And I played around with a couple of local authorities in Scotland, testing that idea out. And then in 2003, I began a project in England called In Control, where we got 6 local authorities to test out this idea. And very quickly, we started to see some very interesting, very positive results. And we opened up the membership program of In Control so that within a couple of years, we had over 100 local authorities, some doing only very small things or very little, but some changing lives for hundreds or thousands of people. What I discovered through that process is that having a good idea isn't really not enough. You need more than a good idea. You need to be able to find a way of making that idea real. You need to be able to find a way of inspiring others to make that idea real. And you need ways to influence the system to make it easier for everybody. Now, it turns out that when you do all of those things, still things can be a bit tricky. And we have all sorts of difficulties today, not least of which is huge cuts to the very budgets that we individualised and gave people control over. So seeing an innovation come to life and change a system in itself is not enough as well. We need to keep remembering there are people's real human rights at stake here, and we need to organise to make sure that we can defend those rights.